All right, so today we're diving into business expansion and specifically Luxembourg. It's become a real hub for international companies right in the heart of Europe. And for good reason, too. Strong economy skilled workforce. But you probably already know all that if you're thinking about expanding there. What you're probably more interested in is how to make that happen smoothly, especially when it comes to HR and, all those legal bits and pieces.
You're absolutely right. Expanding internationally can feel like you're climbing a mountain sometimes. Logistically, legally, and Luxembourg is no exception. With its strong labor laws, it can feel a bit overwhelming.
Okay, so let's talk solutions then. What if I told you there was a way to avoid a lot of that setup hassle? And that's where the idea of a PEO comes in a professional employer organization. They're kind of like a co-pilot, helping you land smoothly in this new market.
It's a really interesting model. Basically, a PEO partners with you and becomes the legal employer of record for your employees in Luxembourg. This means they handle all those HR tasks like payroll contracts and make sure you're totally compliant with the local laws.
Sounds like a dream, right? But how does that actually work in practice? Let's say I find a fantastic candidate in Luxembourg and want to bring them on board quickly. What role does the PEO play in that?
So picture this, you've found the perfect person. Instead of going through the process of setting up a local entity, which could take months, you partner with a PEO. They onboard your new employees seamlessly onto their existing legal structure in Luxembourg, so it's much faster.
So the PEO becomes the official employer on paper then.
Exactly. They handle all the paperwork, the employment contract compliance with Luxembourg's labor laws, payroll, social security contributions, taxes, the whole works.
And where do I fit into all this as the company?
Your role is to focus on what you do best running your business. You manage your employees' day-to-day tasks, their performance and operations. The PEO takes care of the legal and administrative side, giving you the freedom to focus on your core business goals.
So it's like having a whole HR department in Luxembourg without actually having to set one up yourself. That sounds incredibly efficient. But are there ever times when a company might not want to use a PEO?
That's a great question. It really boils down to control. If a company needs absolute and direct control over every single part of their HR processes, a PEO might not be the best fit. But for companies wanting to expand quickly and efficiently, especially into a new market like Luxembourg, a PEO can be a real game changer.
So for someone who's seriously considering Luxembourg, what are the main tangible advantages of working with a PEO?
Speed is a big one. You can be up and running in days with a PEO instead of months setting up a local entity. And that means significant cost savings as well. You avoid the costs of having a physical presence, local HR staff, and going through the whole company incorporation process.
Compliance is another huge factor, right? Luxembourg has its own set of regulations, and I imagine even small mistakes can be costly.
Exactly. With a PEO, you're handing that responsibility to experts who know Luxembourg's labor laws inside and out. They're your safety net, making sure you're operating legally right from the start.
And what about flexibility? Let's say my business needs change and I need to scale my workforce up or down in Luxembourg. Can a PEO handle that?
Absolutely. A PEO gives you that flexibility to adapt. They can manage any HR investments, whether you're expanding or streamlining. This lets you be agile and responsive to market changes without getting bogged down in admin.
So it sounds like a PEO acts as a one-stop shop for everything HR in Luxembourg.
Yeah.
To be more specific, what does that look like day to day?
They handle everything from bringing a new employee on board to their ongoing needs. This includes things like payroll benefits, ensuring compliance with leave policies, even navigating all 11 of Luxembourg's public holidays.
Wait, 11 public holidays. That's interesting. It seems like Luxembourg really values work-life balance. How does this affect the overall work culture there?
It definitely contributes to a positive work environment. It's one of the things that makes Luxembourg so attractive for talent. A PEO can help you leverage these aspects and build a compensation and benefits package that's competitive and aligns with local expectations.
This has been so insightful. I think we've given a good overview of what a PEO is and how it can really simplify expanding into Luxembourg. But we've only just scratched the surface here.
Exactly. There's so much more to explore about the specifics of Luxembourg's labor laws and how a PEO can help you navigate them. If you're intrigued and considering Luxembourg, I highly recommend reaching out to a PEO to discuss your needs.
Absolutely. Finding the right partner is key. We've been talking about PEOs in general, but you might be wondering about a specific PEO making waves in Luxembourg, INS Global. Stick with us as we dive deeper into their services and expertise in the next part of our deep dive.
Welcome back. We've been talking about how a PEO can be a real game changer for companies expanding to Luxembourg, especially when it comes to navigating all those labor laws. So let's dive into some specifics. What are some of those less obvious regulations in Luxembourg that often trip up foreign companies?
Well, let's start with employment contracts. In Luxembourg, most employment contracts are for an indefinite period and they have to be in writing. It might seem like a small thing, but it's a key part of Luxembourg labor law. It gives employees a lot of job security. For companies, it means they need to be very clear in their contracts, outlining everything in detail. So it's not just about protecting the employee, it's also about making sure there's no room for misinterpretation later on.
Exactly. And it goes beyond the type of contract, too. Luxembourg has very specific rules about fixed-term contracts. They can only be used in certain situations with limitations. A PEO can be a huge help guiding companies through this and making sure contracts are watertight.
It sounds like local expertise is crucial. What about other areas like working hours and overtime? I imagine those are pretty regulated in Luxembourg too.
You're right. Luxembourg has a 40-hour work week. Any overtime needs to be justified and properly compensated. It's not just about paying time and a half. There are rules about the maximum overtime hours allowed and when overtime can be requested. Again, a PEO's understanding of local regulations is really valuable here.
Okay, so we've got contracts and working hours. What about things like minimum wage holidays and leave? I know those can be very different from country to country.
Luxembourg has a really strong social welfare system, and that's reflected in their labor laws. They have a guaranteed minimum wage, but it actually changes based on age and the type of work. It's regularly adjusted to match the cost of living, which ensures employees are paid fairly.
That makes sense. It shows they're committed to social responsibility. What about holidays and leave?
Well, we already talked about those 11 public holidays. It's definitely a benefit for employees. Employers either need to give employees the day off or pay double their usual rate if they work on a public holiday.
It's interesting how these laws seem to prioritize work-life balance. What about other types of leave, like annual leave?
Luxembourg has a minimum of 25 days of annual leave per year. That's pretty generous compared to some other countries. And then there's sick leave, maternity leave, paternity leave. All of those have their own specific regulations and provisions.
Wow, it sounds like Luxembourg has a really comprehensive system to protect their workforce.
Absolutely. They really support both employees and employers.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here, from contracts to working hours to leave policies. It's clear that expanding to Luxembourg needs a lot of thought. What I'm realizing is that having a PEO can simplify the process and help you avoid risks.
Absolutely. A PEO is like an experienced guide. They lead you through all the complicated parts of Luxembourg's labor laws and make sure you're doing everything right.
So we've talked about how a PEO helps the employer, but what about the employees? What's it like for them to be hired through a PEO?
That's a good question. From the employee side, they have the same benefits and protections as if they were hired directly by your company. They have a proper employment contract, they're paid on time, and they're covered by Luxembourg's labor laws.
So they're not treated any differently just because they're technically employed by the PEO?
No, not at all. They often benefit from the PEO's expertise in local labor laws and HR. The PEO makes sure they're getting all their rights and benefits. They're a resource for the employee if they have any questions.
That's great to hear. It sounds like a PEO can be beneficial for both the employer and the employee.
Exactly. It simplifies things, minimizes risk, and lets everyone focus on what's important: growing the business and succeeding.
So if someone's listening to this and thinking, wow, I'm excited about Luxembourg, what's their next step?
Talk to a PEO today and tell them about your expansion plans. See how they can tailor their services to your needs and help you navigate Luxembourg's labor market.
It sounds like having expert guidance is essential for a smooth transition to Luxembourg. And speaking of experts, we've been mentioning a specific PEO that's really making a name for itself in Luxembourg: INS Global. They've got a proven track record of helping companies expand successfully in this market. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into INS Global and what they offer in the final part of our deep dive. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the advantages of using a PEO to expand into Luxembourg. Now let's zero in on a specific PEO that's been making a real impact in this market: INS Global. What makes them stand out, and what do they bring to the table for companies wanting to set up shop in Luxembourg?
Well, one thing is their deep understanding of the Luxembourg market. They have this comprehensive approach that really takes the burden of HR off your shoulders.
We've heard that term one-stop shop before. What does that actually mean in terms of working with INS Global?
Well, imagine this. From the moment you decide to hire someone in Luxembourg, INS Global becomes your dedicated HR partner there. They're the legal employer of record, so they handle all the contractual stuff, making sure everything's compliant with Luxembourg labor law right from the get-go.
So they take care of drafting employment contracts, making sure everything's legally sound.
Exactly. They make sure the contract is solid, protects both you and your employee. It goes beyond just the initial contract, too. INS Global handles all the ongoing HR tasks like payroll taxes, social security contributions, ensuring your employees are paid correctly and on time every time.
I bet that's a huge weight off a company's mind, especially when they're new to a market like Luxembourg. Staying on top of all those regulations can be a full-time job itself.
Absolutely. And there's more. INS Global also takes care of those day-to-day HR things like onboarding new hires, managing leave requests, even handling any tricky employee relations issues that might pop up. They're like a shield between your company and your Luxembourg team, offering expert support every step of the way.
Wow, so it sounds like they really cover all bases when it comes to HR. What about benefits? Is that something INS Global manages too?
Absolutely. They ensure your employees in Luxembourg have access to all the legally required benefits like health insurance, pension contributions, paid leave, all of it. They can even advise you on any extra benefits that are common in Luxembourg. So you can put together a competitive package that attracts and keeps top talent.
So to put it simply, INS Global essentially becomes your HR department in Luxembourg.
You got it. They provide the expertise, the structure, the peace of mind you need to succeed in a new and sometimes complex market. You can concentrate on growing your business knowing your HR is in capable hands.
Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive into expanding into Luxembourg and the role PEOs like INS Global can play. Do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners who are ready to take the leap?
Luxembourg is a vibrant market with a lot to offer businesses. Don't let the complexities of expansion scare you off. With a partner like INS Global, you can tackle those challenges confidently and focus on what you do best. Reach out to INS Global today, tell them about your expansion project, and see how they can help make Luxembourg your next success story.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure exploring all this with you. And for everyone listening, if this deep dive has sparked your interest in Luxembourg, don't hesitate to take that next step. Contact INS Global and let them guide you on this exciting journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep growing.